Hello everyone, I need to talk about a long, complicated situation with my older brother. I guess I'm talking about this to figure out if I was the bad guy or not. Fasten your seatbelts, it's a long story. I have an older brother, let's call him Mark. That's not his real name, but for the sake of this story I'll call him that, to avoid any more problems with him. On the outside we were a pretty normal family. But on the inside Mark made my childhood difficult. He's 3 years older, and to him I wasn't a brother. I was his personal punching bag, his audience, his source of entertainment. It wasn't always physical, but the constant psychological problems, the humiliation, it eats away at you. It all started small, like him, accidentally, putting a footstool on me at the dinner table so I spilled milk on myself, and then laughing while I was being scolded for being clumsy. He told my parents that I said things I never did, that I got into trouble for things that never happened. He was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the clumsy, forgetful little brother who was always causing trouble. The scene was set early on, and I didn't even know I was on it. I think the first time it really, truly sunk in that this was intentional and not just brotherly teasing was at my 10th birthday party. I was so excited because my parents had rented a bouncy castle. All my friends from school were there. Mark was being weirdly nice. He even helped me set up the presents on a table. Then, when it was time for me to blow out the candles on my big superhero cake, he said, "Wait. Let me get a better picture for Mom." He fumbled with his phone, pretending to get the angle right. Then he stumbled forward, and his entire hand went right through the top of my cake, smashing the plastic superhero figure right into the icing. The room went silent. He pulled his hand back, covered in frosting, and said, "Whoops. My bad, little man. Guess you'll have to make another wish." And he laughed. Not a mean laugh, but this light, airy chuckle like it was the funniest accident in the world. Everyone else nervously laughed too. But I saw the look in his eyes. It was pure, calculated victory. He made my day about him, and he'd humiliated me in front of everyone. I tried to be tough, but I cried that night. That was the discovery. That was the moment I knew. A few days after the cake incident, I finally worked up the courage to tell my parents. I laid it all out, how it wasn't an accident, how he was always doing stuff like this. My mom sighed and said, "Oh, honey, he's just being a teenager. He doesn't know his own strength. Don't be so sensitive." My dad just said, "Boys will be boys. He's your brother, he loves you. He's just teasing." And then they called Mark in. He put on this performance worthy of an award. His face fell. He looked so genuinely hurt. He said, "I feel awful. I really did just trip. I would never ruin your birthday on purpose. I'm so sorry you feel that way." He even gave me a hug. My parents melted. They told me to accept his apology, and that was that. I was left standing there, feeling completely crazy and utterly alone. His justification was that I had misunderstood, and my parents bought it completely. That was the pattern. Every single time. After that non-confrontation, something in me just broke. The initial shock of my parents not having my back turned into this cold, hard anger. I was furious at Mark for being such a manipulative person, and I was even more furious at my parents for being so blind. But under the anger was just a deep, profound sadness. I felt completely insignificant. If my own family wouldn't stick up for me, what did that say about me? I started accepting that this was just my life. I became quieter, kept to myself in my room. I figured if I was invisible, he couldn't target me. It was a strategy of surrender. I just had to get through it. The acceptance didn't last. The anger was still there, just buried. The tipping point came during my first year of high school. Mark was a senior, big man on campus. He promised to show me around on the first day. Instead, he gathered his friends in the hallway, pointed at me, and in a voice dripping with fake concern said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's my little brother. Everyone be nice to him, he's a little special. He still sleeps with a nightlight. The laughter that followed was like a physical blow. That was it. The surrender was over. The anger erupted, but this time it was cold and clear. I didn't say a word. I just looked right at him, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I made a decision in that hallway. I was done being his joke. It was time for the punchline to change. I knew I couldn't fight him physically or through my parents. His power was social, his charm, his reputation. So, my revenge had to be social, too. It had to be something that would humiliate him the way he'd humiliated me, something that would make people see the real him. And it had to be perfectly timed. I started observing him like he was a subject in a lab. I noted his routines, his insecurities, what he valued most. His entire identity was built on being the cool, funny, laid-back guy. I just had to find the right thread to pull to make it all unravel. I was patient. I waited for the perfect opportunity. The perfect moment came a few months later. Mark was a total perfectionist about his car, a used but shiny black coupe he'd saved up for. It was his pride and joy. He was also preparing for his senior prom, and he'd asked this girl, Sarah, who was completely out of his league. He was uncharacteristically nervous. He spent weeks planning the perfect ask. He decided he was going to fill his car with hundreds of balloons and have a big sign in the window that said, "Prom?" He spent a whole afternoon blowing up those balloons, his ego inflating with each one. He left the car unlocked in the driveway, ready for the big reveal the next morning. He never even considered that I might be a factor. That was his first mistake. I didn't do anything to the car. That was too obvious. Instead, that night, I went into the garage and found his backup plan, a giant, gaudy, glitter-filled card he'd bought as a backup in case the balloon thing was too much. I took it to my room. Very carefully, with a steady hand, I edited his message. He'd written, "Sarah, you're a dream. Go to prom with me? Mark." I took a matching pen and right after "me," I added a single, perfectly placed word. It now read, "Sarah, you're a dream. Go to prom with me and my brother? Mark." It was subtle. It was bizarre. It was genius. I slipped the card back into its envelope and returned it to the exact spot in the garage. The next day, he was so focused on the balloons, he never once looked at the card. He just grabbed it and left. He pulled off the big balloon reveal at Sarah's house. She came out, saw the car, laughed, and seemed genuinely impressed. Then he handed her the card. I can only imagine the look on his face when she opened it, read it, and her smile slowly faded into a look of pure confusion. She looked from the card to him, to the car full of balloons, and back to the card. "You want me to go with you and your brother?" she asked, completely bewildered. He, of course, had no idea what she was talking about. He snatched the card back, read it, and his face went bright red. He started stammering. No, that's a mistake. A typo." But the damage was done. The moment was weird, awkward, and completely ruined. She politely declined, saying the whole thing was a little strange. His perfect plan had collapsed into utter absurdity, and he had no one to blame but a typo. The story spread, of course. Not as a malicious prank, but as this hilarious, bizarre anecdote about how Mark fumbled his prom ask in the weirdest way possible. "Did you hear about Mark? Asked Sarah to go with him and his little brother? What a weirdo." His cool, laid-back persona took a direct hit. He was now the guy with the strange, clingy family proposal. He was furious, but he was completely mystified. He ranted at home about it, but how do you get mad at a typo? He just had to eat it. My parents even chuckled about it, which infuriated him even more. He was being humiliated, and everyone was just laughing. The tables had turned. But I wasn't done. Prom night arrived. Mark had ended up going with a friend, but he was still sour about the whole thing. He spent an hour styling his hair, preening in front of the mirror, trying to reclaim his dignity. He came out in his rented tux, ready for his pictures. My mom had her camera ready. "Okay, Mark, smile," she said. As she was about to take the picture, I did the simplest thing. From just behind her, I held up a small, whiteboard sign I'd made. It had a single, giant, beautifully drawn question mark on it. Nothing else. Just question mark. I made sure it was visible right next to his head in the camera's viewfinder. Click. He didn't even see it. He posed for a dozen pictures, and in half of them, that random, confusing question mark is hovering right by his ear. The photos are now permanent family records. To this day, he doesn't know why my mom giggles every time she looks at his prom pictures. The humiliation was subtle, constant, and utterly confusing for him, just like he'd always done to me. He was in a foul mood after prom. He knew something was off but could never pinpoint it. He'd look at those photos and just see this random question mark, a completely nonsensical inside joke he wasn't in on. He'd get frustrated and ask my mom why she put that in the picture, and she'd just say, "It's cute. It's quirky," which drove him absolutely up the wall. He even tried to bully me about it a few times, demanding to know if I had something to do with it. I just looked at him with genuine, innocent confusion and said, "Do what? I don't know what you're talking about, Mark." I used his own weapons against him, plausible deniability, and making him feel like he was crazy for suspecting something. The frustration on his face was better than any apology I could have ever gotten. Things changed after that. He never stopped being a bit of a jerk, but the constant, targeted humiliation campaigns against me pretty much ended. I think on some level he knew. He knew the universe, or maybe just his little brother, had finally punched back in a language he understood but couldn't translate. He became more cautious around me. There was a new, wary respect. The dynamic was permanently altered. I had taken back my power not with a shout, but with a whisper, a very confusing, question mark-shaped whisper. Looking back, I learned that sometimes fighting fire with fire just makes a bigger fire. But I also learned that you can't just lie down and take it forever. My revenge wasn't about hurting him physically or destroying his things. It was about using my brain to level the playing field. I used my knowledge of him, his vanity, his need for control, against him. I learned the power of patience and strategy over raw emotion. Most importantly, I learned that my voice and my feelings mattered, even if the only person who was ever going to truly stand up for me was me. So, was I the jerk? Maybe. But I don't really regret it. It was the only way I could see to end the cycle. My advice to anyone in a similar situation is this: you deserve respect. If talking doesn't work, sometimes you have to get creative. Don't sink to their level of cruelty, but don't be afraid to be clever. Protect your peace. Your revenge doesn't have to be loud or mean. It can be quiet, clever, and something that lets you sleep at night with a smile. Find a way to win that doesn't destroy who you are in the process. Thanks for listening.